This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while now, because if you were a subscriber at the time or check out my past videos, you'll know I followed and covered this game for several months leading up to release. Jump Force is an arena fighter developed by Spike Chunsoft and published by Bandai Namco. More specifically, Jump Force is a celebration of Shueisha's Weekly Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary. Keep that in mind throughout this video, by the way. The game was announced at Microsoft's E3 conference on June 10th, 2018. The trailer looked great. They're using Unreal Engine 4. I love arena fighters and I really enjoy J-Stars, so I couldn't wait to see who would be playable in this new installment. Prior to Jump Force, Spike Chunsoft developed a game called J-Stars Victory Versus. It was released on March 19th, 2014 on the PS3. I myself didn't play the game until its re-release in the West for PS4 the following year. The game wasn't your typical arena fighter because it wasn't really one. Each map varied in size from different locales of the anime they represent, but they were all mostly large maps with a host of obstacles featuring some verticality. Buildings and terrains were destructible and each fighter felt truly unique and had their own playstyle. The game featured co-op split screen through its campaign, local and online fights. The game was rough around the edges for sure, but the roster and uniqueness of each character made up for it somewhat. 52 characters from 32 different jump series. 39 of these were playable, the rest were supports. I'm not going to list them all, but 32 different series gives a lot of fan service to a wider audience, especially if there's only 39 playable. It broadens the variety and exposes players who weren't familiar with some to new anime and manga. A few years after J-Stars was released, we get a reveal for Jump Force. So while this isn't a direct sequel, it is a follow-up title of Spike Chunsoft having another go at an anime fighter. And what J-Stars felt like it needed was a bigger budget. This seemed to be it. The marketing immediately from that trailer was that this game is to showcase and celebrate Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary. So expectations were already pretty damn high. First impressions were that it looked promising. It doesn't take much to hype up the anime community, and then also teasing Light Yagami at the end was just icing on the cake. Marketing material was primarily through issues of V-Jump, with Bandai's Twitter accounts then posting some of the screenshots in the magazines a few days afterwards. We'd very occasionally get the odd YouTube trailer. So unless you were following the Twitter accounts, you weren't really seeing any of this. Two prominent Twitter users that were no way affiliated with Bandai, Yonko Productions and Nini Spangle, were pretty much the primary source of Jump Force news literally days before Bandai even announced anything. Over the course of 2018, the roster announcements were getting more and more underwhelming because more and more characters from series already confirmed were being added, and it was starting to look a lot like this game was being targeted towards the mainstream anime watcher. Nonetheless, the hype train kept going because I personally was holding out for those less popular characters, as I know lots of others were too. In September 2018, Bandai announced the registration for the Jump Force closed beta. For those of us who got in, we got our first glimpse of the game and the online hub, and unfortunately this is where alarm bells started to ring, but I kept in mind that it was a beta. And after the beta, Bandai sent all players surveys to give them feedback, and this was an in-depth survey asking for quite a lot of feedback too. Suggestions, our experiences, characters people wanted to see in the game, features, music suggestions, bug fixes. They even directly addressed the horrid motion blur in the lobby as a question asking if it made players feel nauseous. But the gameplay was fun, and hey, they were taking feedback, so that's a really good sign and no biggie. Again, it's a beta and they have time to fix all these issues because we still don't have a release date yet. Then at the end of October, they announced the release date, which came as a complete surprise, and the reason I say this isn't because the release date was announced, it's because of the actual date it would be releasing. In the announcement trailer and subsequent trailers, there was no release date outside of a 2019 placeholder window. Usually means we're looking at a Q3 or Q4 release. I can't remember a game that seems to have been moved forward in such a small time frame, where up until the end of October you're telling us 2019 to then suddenly tell us it's out in a couple months. This seemed to me that this was being rushed out of the door for one reason or another. Possibly Bandai weren't happy with how the game was turning out and they didn't want to fund full development any longer, or maybe they didn't want to pay any license fees for a longer period of time without seeing some returns. Really, I don't understand, because this means the game had essentially been in the final stages of development most of 2018, but somehow they didn't know the game would be released in February until 3 months prior. We then get the final few characters confirmed, which by proxy confirms something else, that this game was definitely aimed toward the Western audience, a 50th anniversary that doesn't celebrate what the magazine represents and has represented. Over the course of the next month, reviewers and early adopters got their hands on the final product, and my god, I am thankful to those early adopters, because it was thanks to them that myself and others didn't buy the shitty thing. When gameplay was first being uploaded to YouTube and streamed on Twitch, it was honestly jaw-dropping, but in the worst possible ways. Remember, this is supposed to be a celebration of Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary. Let me start with the cutscenes. Fucking hell, these cutscenes are crap. Straight up high school 3D animation levels of character models and animation. They all move so awkwardly, like they're puppets with a stick up their damn asses. Just sheer laziness. Some cutscenes will have characters just T-pose out of there, and when there was some attempt at effort put into animating a cutscene, the frame rate drops significantly during a goddamn cutscene. But for the most part, it's like a kid bashing action figures together. All characters have the same copy-paste stationary animations, and they all look so stiff and ugly. No matter how well you customize your avatar, they always looked so lost, so out of place, and so incredibly dumb looking, and no one can tell me otherwise. I couldn't find a single outfit that could do my fighter any justice. I had to straight up cover my dude's face with Overhaul's mask because I couldn't bear looking at that dead, lifeless face any longer. Okay, so the cutscenes suck, the avatars suck. The actual campaign must be good, right? The campaign and story itself was riddled with horrible cutscenes, mundane missions that were the same thing over and over and over again. I get it, it's a fighter, what do you expect? I don't know, I wasn't expecting CC2 levels of boss fights, but I was expecting more than artificial difficulty inserted into specific fights that the CPU could just one combo KO you. And what the fuck is up with Ryuk not being voiced? This is so awkward. What the hell, Spike? The whole game is a joke. Did the devs seriously look at this and think, I'm proud to say I helped animate this cutscene. What else? The loading. Dear God, the loading in this game gives even Sonic 06 a run for its money. Every little action you do puts you into a loading screen for minutes on end. Some cutscenes literally feature a single exchange of dialogue, only for you to be kicked back into a loading screen again. Inexcusable. The last thing I'll touch on about the campaign is the story and how Light was for nothing else but to help market and move more units. He does not contribute anything to the story. You'll be thinking, what the fuck is he up to throughout it, because he's not really doing anything, but you know Light, you can't really trust him, he must have some ulterior motive. But ultimately does nothing apart from set up a sequel where he's probably going to be the actual antagonist this time. He could have easily just appeared at the very end of the game, mention he was spectating this all, and then steal the goddamn cube. It would have made no difference. The roster? For a 50th anniversary to have 50 years worth of material to use, they played it far too safe and conservative, with only mainstream series and characters given a chance. I think the only character I had never heard of was that pervy bazooka guy that's popular in France. I can't even be bothered to recheck his name. Such a crap on the roster that was J-Stars. Seriously, J-Stars is more of a 50th anniversary celebration than this. The 3 Akira Toriyama characters that were confirmed as playable in trailers were in fact not playable at launch. Then in true live service fashion, Spike Chunsoft and Bandai were radio silent on whether they would be added or not, and if we'd need to pay for them. It wasn't until July, so 5 months later, that 2 of them were announced to be playable in a free update. Terrible communication, Bandai and Spike. It's not acceptable to be this quiet on a game where you've made promises and did not live up to these promises. You have to communicate. Now onto the online portion. Now here I had some fun when I wasn't matched with a fucking Smurf anyway. This game has real Smurf problems. The reason being is because you get so many save slots where a player can rank up with one fighter and get good, create a new save and just play unranked matches and match with new players just to troll them. This isn't fun. Practicing combos with fighters felt satisfying though. There is fun to be had in its simplistic fight mechanics. I would like to say there is some depth to it, but in reality the only depth is picking a trio that can create endless combo loops. And if you get matched up against an Avatar player, well, you know something stinks of cheese and they'll be spamming supports or guard break specials. But Spike Chunsoft don't even seem to care, because some fighters like Frieza, for example, are insanely OP at the moment, being able to chain some of the most ridiculous shit with no means of evading. And it's a shame, because the game had potential. There were fundamentals in place for a great game. It clearly had development and management issues, and I feel this was exacerbated by their over-ambition. I respect that Spike had a lot of creative ideas and that they wanted this game to be great and cared, you can't deny that. The online hub, mounts, social interaction, replays, raids, clans, avatar creation, but just because they had ambition does not excuse them for their poor execution. They should have scrapped some, if not most of these concepts in the very early stages of development. They didn't have the budget nor resources to manage a game of such scale in the time frame they were given, which resulted in the entire game suffering as a result. They are using Unreal Engine 4, and this was the best they could come up with. Anyway, post-launch with everything now outed, the game was and still is to some a complete joke that doesn't get old to laugh at. Reviews came in across critics and users alike. The game was not received well, people blasting it for its lackluster roster, terrible graphics, horrid animations and overall bugginess. Not surprising and all very much valid criticisms. There were some immediate issues that players encountered that needed to be patched ASAP, but once the game came out everything was quiet. No communications on when people would expect to see a rematch option introduced. Seriously, a rematch option was not available out of the box. Are you fucking kidding me, Chungus? Loading issues were still there and hadn't been addressed since the beta. In fact, I don't think any of the issues, bar the lobby motion blur, were really addressed, and they only made it slightly better. Then a month later, so a month of silence, a roadmap was announced. Oh fucking cripes, here we go. You know the ones, the it's broken now but we'll fix it later, we promise. So they've already got their money at this point, and now the skeleton crew were here to mop up the shit over the course of the year. But again, even then they weren't communicating enough, which a live service game needs to have outstanding communication to keep players' trust. It is so rare these days that you get a full product on release. You pay full price to essentially get an alpha version. By the time the full version has been patched through, the game is like £10 on shittygames@ashit.com. Guess how long it took to get the rematch button patched in for online matches. Now obviously those who are core Jump Force players who have been playing from the beginning, you'll know. But if you're newer players like myself, I'll give you a few seconds. So if you thought a month later, well, you'd be wrong. In fact, if you thought 2, 3 or even 4 months later, you'd still be wrong, because it took over 6 months on August 22nd to get a damn replay button. Naturally, with a live service game and a fighter at that, there was bound to be DLC. The season pass promised 9 additional fighters, which sparked some hope for us core fans who were expecting a far more diverse lineup of fighters. But those embers were very quickly and abruptly put out because a saint going by the name of Sergio M3 worked his data mining magic and found all 9 characters before any of them were announced. And he was 100% spot on. I forgot this is aimed at the Western mainstream that probably don't even know what a Shonen Jump magazine is, so naturally they were all fighters from series that were already in the game, overinflating the Naruto, Dragon Ball, Bleach and One Piece rosters. So now fast forward to today, and where is the game now? The online community is still fairly active, at least on consoles. The same can't be said for the PC, however. They've announced a Fighters Pass 2, don't get your hopes up, even though the fanboy in me still does. I mean, one character's already been data mined at the time of the recording, which is Shoto Todoroki, so if it's going to be anything like the first pass, then they're all going to be characters from established series in the game already. Not much else has changed really, patches here and there to make the game more bearable, but it doesn't solve the overall issues. As mentioned, the game suffers from a serious case of the Smurfs, making it not welcoming for new players. They've addressed the loading times somewhat, they are more tolerable I guess. They still take more time than they should though, the amount of loading times is still unacceptable. Spike and Bandai have no excuse for the way this game turned out. They shoved all feedback and criticism under the rug because they just don't give a shit. Ignoring player outcry and giving back less than acceptable frequencies of communications and updates. Ignoring player feedback despite asking for it specifically. A terrible marketing campaign run by a disorganized corporation full of miscommunication that couldn't care less with the quality of its titles. What was supposed to be a 50th celebration turned out to be 49 hard raw slaps to the face, with the last being a sleight of hand trick which took your $60, leaving you both in pain and $60 short. Here's hoping Spike Chunsoft will learn from this and take the criticism to make Jump Force 2 electric shitaloo an actual good game. What went wrong with Jump Force? Fucking everything. Oh, and the bazooka guy's called Rio Cyber.